Welcome to the Secure CIO, the podcast for technology executives who are tasked with hiring and retaining great cybersecurity leaders. Join best-selling author Claire Pales together with industry thought leaders as they answer your questions about sourcing the right leaders, building cybersecurity teams, candidate selection, salaries, skills, and more.
Hello, I'm Claire Pales and welcome to the Secure CIO podcast. Today's guest is Kathleen Smith. Kathleen is the CMO for CyberSecureGov and ClearJobs.net. She's coached thousands of job seekers and employers on how to better connect and work together to achieve the mutual goal of employment. Kathleen presents at several conferences each year on recruiting and job search, some of which include BSidesLV, BSidesTampa, BSidesSATX, DerbyCon, CircleCityCon, FedCyber and CyberSecureGov. Kathleen is the Director of HireGround, BSidesLV's two-day career track. She's well respected within the recruitment community and is the co-founder and past president of Recruit DC, the largest community of recruiters in the Washington DC area. Kathleen, thank you so much for joining us today.
Claire, thank you for having me. It's so exciting to talk about one of my favorite topics.
So tell us a little bit about ClearJobs.net and CyberSecJobs.com. What's the key detail about your business?
We have been in business for over 18 years. We really focus on providing customer service and quality products to both candidates and employers so that they can connect in the ways that make fulfilling careers and fulfilling workforces. We have a variety of different products that can be integrated with each other between career events, social media, job postings, resume data search. So we really customize our programs to really meet the employer's needs. But we also provide a lot of really good tools and programs for the candidates to better educate them on the career search process.
And what's different, do you think, about the way that your organisation services the candidate community?
One is that most of the account managers and people who work as part of ClearJobs.net and CyberSecJobs.com are U.S. military veterans or U.S. military veteran spouses. And that is how we started within the community, providing services to the security cleared community, and then realized through that experience that being on the ground in the communities, finding out the ground intel as far as how people are looking for jobs, what the challenges are, but also what are the challenges that employers are having, especially when they're looking at finding hard to find talent. So this kind of really getting into the community has really serviced not only our employers, but also our candidates.
And one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you today on the podcast was that you have undertaken some surveys recently looking at the security community and how they look for jobs. And so we've got a couple of surveys to talk about, but let's look at the survey around cybersecurity careers first. And what was the key purpose of the survey and what were some of the findings that you can highlight for us?
We hear so many times that there is this talent shortage, yet being in the information technology community for almost 20 years, I know that there has not been a shortage of information security or information assurance professionals or people who are constantly learning about finding better ways to be secure. So when we were looking in the community and talking to professionals who are in the community, they were constantly frustrated with not being able to find a job. So after 2 years of hearing this at every single conference, hacker conference, cybersecurity conference I was going to, we really realized that there was a disconnect, that we're talking about a shortage, yet professionals who have 10 to 20 years experience were really not able to find jobs. So we found that there was another story to be told, and we needed to find the data to do that. And that is why we did the survey and really went into various different grassroots communities, really looking at people who are hands-on professionals in the security community and really asking them their challenges with finding the jobs. And we really found that more than half of the people who are looking for a job don't really even know how to find a job. And this really goes back to what we were learning with the veteran community, because even though there may be programs out there to help people find jobs, there's not necessarily an ongoing education as to what are some of the common pitfalls that candidates run into, and what are some of the things that employers are providing as resources, but those resources as far as how to get through the hiring process was not connecting with candidates. We're also finding that there was just a growing amount of animosity and frustration among the candidates as far as not being able to understand the difference between a direct recruiter or staffing firm or a headhunter. And we found that when we were able to explain what each one of those were, we found that people really wanted to work with direct recruiters. So we were looking at another problem within the community, which was a lot of people not understanding who was the best hiring authority to talk to within a company. Some of the other things were people not understanding where the next step was for them in their career progression. We talk a lot in the community about finding mentors, but I think that just some basic step-by-step process of how someone becomes a CIO, how someone becomes a manager, what kind of role that they need to look at next when they're looking at their next job, was not something, this kind of information is not readily available, and was very frustrating to many of the professionals that we were surveying.
And so given that, as you said, half of the respondents didn't know how to find their next job, what were some of the search methods that they were coming up with when they did sort of go out searching?
So there were 4 major job search methods that the participants identified. The first was 84% said networking was the way that they found their jobs. Another one was, the next one was 79% said that they found this through social media. 60% said they found their jobs through referrals, and another 60% said that they found their jobs by job boards. We hear when you're talking about recruitment marketing that referrals, employee referrals, and job boards are the number 1 and number 2 ways of companies finding their next candidates. So there seems to be a bit of a disconnect. If there's not a lot of networking going on in this community, or not a lot of activity and community engagement on social media, the top 2 ways that information security, cybersecurity professionals are looking for jobs, the employers are not there. And so we were sort of like, okay, this is pointing to some other ways that employers may want to get out into their communities and support community engagement so that there's a lot more awareness about them, but also gives it a way for professionals who are looking for new opportunities. They need to expand their networks, and they can only expand the networks if the employers are in those communities.
Why do you think networking works so well? I mean, recruiters spend a lot of money advertising. Companies that are going to market independently themselves, they use job boards. I mean, obviously you guys run a successful job board business. So why is it that networking is right at the top, and why do you think it works better than some of these other methods?
Because we're talking about a very important part of our life. We identify with our career, we identify with our role, and we need to have someone else validate that the next step is from a trusted resource. So they're going to rely on someone that they know in the community, someone that they've met face to face. We can talk a lot about, connections through new technology, but having a one-on-one relationship with someone who is actually working at a company or actually has done the role that you're interviewing for, that gives you a lot more trust and confidence in being able to go to work for that company and work with that colleague. We all are looking for ways to validate our experience, and being able to have 2 or 3 people in our networks be able to say, yes, that company X or that company Y has a really great environment. They're really going to support you in your career. Those are things that you cannot find in a job posting. It's not something you're going to be able to find in, a hiring manual. That is going to require a one-on-one relationship.
One of the really interesting findings for me was that money ranked really high in what attracts candidates to particular companies, and high salaries don't always equal retention. So I'm just interested in your thoughts on why you think the survey results suggested that money is a driving force to join a particular organisation.
You're right, high salary does not equate with retention. But when we're looking at this from the candidate's perspective, salary is a driving force for a variety of reasons. The first is a lot of professionals use a progression in their salary as an indication of the progression in their career. And that's where we spend a lot of time educating candidates on, well, you might not be able to be advancing in your salary. Be sure you're looking at the other opportunities within this new position. You know, what kind of skills are you going to learn? What kind of experience are you going to get? What kind of networks are you going to be able to work on? It's also a driving force when we're talking about many of the workforce hubs are in areas that are high cost of living. And if you're asking someone to do a very stressful job in an area that has a high cost of living, which, you know, in many areas around the world, our tech centers are in our high cost of living, having a high salary is actually what people need to just get by. What we found in the survey, very close second and third to the high salary, was a good work environment and a good work-life balance. And what's interesting is that in the good environment, that really taps into supporting the certification and education that information security and cybersecurity professionals need to keep ahead and abreast of what's going on. It's also having an understanding from the C-level to understand what are the challenges. A lot of times we'll hear the frustration of, you know, the people above me do not understand the business risk that we're running into, or they have not asked for our opinion on how we can mitigate our risk. And so a lot of companies are really working on making sure that there's a clear flow of communication between the security teams and the C-suite. And finally, good work-life balance. When you're talking in this community, there is a lot of burnout, there's a lot of stress, there are a lot of mental health issues. And being able to provide a safe environment where people can feel like they can be successful and where they feel that they can fail and be able to learn from that failure, those are the kinds of environments that security teams are looking for.
I want to move on to survey 2, and I think what you've just said is a really good segue into some of the content and findings from the second survey that you ran. You know, you're talking about organisations that really support employees in a great and safe work environment. Survey 2 for me was fascinating and just something that I thought, why didn't I think of that? You know, the survey that you ran around volunteer work, and I'll let you talk about it because you'll explain it far better than I can. But if you could let the listeners know some of the key findings from the second survey, that would be great.
Happy to. Yes, this is, I was so tickled to be able to come up with this survey and get it out into the community. From a marketing perspective, I have always used community volunteering as a way to get into a community and develop marketing and outreach and communication strategies. That is what I have used as my basis as a marketing professional for the last several decades. So getting involved in the cybersecurity community, I started getting involved in various different organizations and various different conferences. And we as a company run a lot of career events, but we're professionals and we're paid to do this, and we have a lot of resources. I was starting to look at the astounding number of conferences that were produced or are produced within the cybersecurity community that are all volunteer run. And when you look at the majority of the conferences that are out there, the ones that the professionals go to learn their new skills, to learn what's happening new in the community, something that just broke yesterday, that is the information that's being shared at most of the volunteer conferences. So while being involved with the community, I started to notice that colleagues who were moving and progressing within their volunteer career, moving up from a sole contributor to a team lead to a director. They were having the same parallel progression in their professional career. They were going from being, a frontline person to a manager to a director, and then moving on to a bigger role in a different company. And I was wondering if this was something that was just unique to the 2 or 3 communities I was involved in, or were we able to see this across the board? And a resounding, yes, this is happening across the community. Several people were saying that they not only volunteered for one organization, they volunteered for several organizations. They looked at how this helped them develop various different technical skills and non-technical skills. They also looked at their engagement with their employer as a way of saying, I'm going to stay with my employer. More than 97% said they would move to a new employer if the employer supported community engagement. 60% said that they were staying with their current employer because the employer was supporting their involvement in the community, was giving them time off to do that, was showing the support by sponsoring an event or providing to some way or another provide monetary or in-kind support to the event. So it was really great to see that this was coming to light, that what we were seeing, thousands of volunteers throughout the world who not only had their time that they did at work, they also had family, and then after that they also spent hundreds of hours putting together a conference, usually that was somewhere not located locally, but somewhere across country, and that they were doing a lot of extra work for this. So it was fascinating, and we're going to be launching it again this fall to do a year-over-year comparison.
I think that's such a great idea to see, what new skills come out and what the volunteers, I guess, see might have changed in the 12 months as well. If there's more people out there making the time and giving the effort. What were some of the key skills that were reported by volunteers that they could take away from their work, their volunteer work, and take back to their day-to-day job?
So the top 4 skills that volunteers reported saying that they learned from their volunteering, the first was teamwork, the next was organizing, third was planning, and fourth was communication. And when you compare this to other studies specifically put out by LinkedIn as to the non-technical skills that employers are looking for, there's an exact match. They're looking for people who know how to work in teams, who can organize a project, who can plan it out, and can be good communicators not only with their teams, but also with their managers. What was also found is that the participants felt that volunteering really helped them in their social and networking skills, which goes back to the first survey of being able to find a job because people are expanding their networks. But we're talking about a lot of people who tend to not have to work in a group environment under, crisis situations or situations where they're dealing with people that they've never worked with before. And this is a fascinating thing within the volunteering community because you have teams who work together throughout the year who are on conference calls or who are communicating online, but may not meet each other until one time a year when they're working face-to-face. So we're talking about developing a lot of different skills that you don't really cover in the workplace. And you're covering a lot of skills that you're not actually going to get in any kind of professional development course.
It's fascinating that 94% from your survey results of the volunteers believe that it's having a positive impact on the industry. It's so obvious why that is, the fact that they're getting these skills, they're meeting up with these people year on year, they're building their own networks. I mean, from your side, how do you think that it's positively impacting the security industry?
I think because it's fulfilling and because it's tangible. And there's so much negativity that is talked about in our industry. We're talking constantly about attacks. We're talking about burnout. We're talking about mental health issues. We're talking about people who don't feel protected, people are constantly losing their assets. So we don't have a lot of warm and fuzzies or positive within our industry. So I was really glad to see this statistic that people found by giving back, by being part of the community, allowed them to have a positive upside to being in the security community. But as I said, it's something fulfilling, being able to see a program reach its goal. A lot of us don't have that fulfillment within our day-to-day job, saying, I got something done, or I brought people together, or I made a difference. And that is what being part of various different community conferences or community organizations provided the security professionals. They have a way of giving back and feeling positive about their involvement.
And what do you think the survey shows about retention in our industry?
What's interesting is when we were looking at the sort of ground floor of the survey, I did sort of a lot of conversations with volunteers and saying, what does your employer say about your involvement? Are you wearing a logoed shirt? Are you not wearing a logoed shirt? Are you letting people know who you work for? And it was pretty apparent those employees, those professionals who were very proud of their company support. They talked about the company, they talked about how great it was, and you definitely saw that these people stayed with the company because the company saw the value in that person and saw the value in supporting something that that professional was really committed to. When we looked at the exact data, nearly 60% of the participants said that they stayed with their current employer because of the community support, because the employer understood that they were going to get professional development, not only from the technical skills, putting up a knock, putting up a SOC, being able to do a lot of the crisis management, but also a lot of the non-technical skills, the leadership, the management, the planning. So those employers really saw the value of this. And a lot of times when I heard of people who were looking to move someplace else, they were always looking for somebody who was supportive of the community and supportive of community involvement.
I think it's such a great realization, that people can gain these soft skills. And I don't like to call them soft skills, but I guess people know what I'm talking about when I say soft skills. Through this mechanism of volunteering, it uplifts the industry. And you don't even have to volunteer in our industry. Any volunteering will teach you these skills of networking and project management, and also, a bit more compassion and empathy potentially as well. So, I think it's a fantastic survey, and the results are very compelling. I'm looking forward to seeing if there's any change when you run the survey again. Kathleen, what would be one piece of advice you'd give to employers who are hiring security leaders or building out security teams, and not just from your surveys, but from your experience? Would there be one thing that you'd give as a piece of advice?
One piece of advice with several different parts. In the 18 years I've been in the recruitment marketing industry, I find that a lot of people try to go for a silver bullet, and they try to find the next new shiny technology that comes down the pipeline, when your best resource is actually inside your company. It is your teams that you already have. By finding out where they are involved, what kind of career development challenges or successes do they have within your company, and how you can improve that, is really being able to find the solution that already exists within your company. What's also great about that is you're able to pull across a variety of budgets to be able to take your company to the next level. So you're able to tap into your training budget and your human resources budget and your recruiting budget and other budgets to be able to say, let's look at this as a company. How can we help career progression within our company, and how can we get our company more involved with the security community?
I think it's excellent advice, Kathleen. And, more and more I'm hearing from people that the resource you need is potentially right in front of you. It's inside your company. So I think it's really great advice, and certainly stands the test of time. What mechanisms can people use to find out more about the surveys, connect with you, learn more? What's the best place to find you?
So the best place to find me is either on LinkedIn at Kathleen E. Smith, or on Twitter. My handle is Yes, It's Kathleen. The surveys can be found on slideshare.net/CyberSecJobs, and I'm happy to share those resources.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing the survey results today and your industry experience. I really appreciate it. And I look forward and wish you luck with the surveys into the future.
Thank you so much, Claire.
That's all we have time for today. Thanks so much for listening. For more information on all our guests, check out the show notes at thesecurecio.com, where you can also find more information on the Secure CIO framework and sign up for my newsletter. If you loved the show, please subscribe to the podcast and feel free to leave me a 5-star rating. I'll see you next week.